Let's go.
Let's go. Oh, no.
Do you want to?
Sorry. I'll let you.
Next one.
I'm excited and I feel relaxed and I'm ready to party. Don't say sorry. You don't need to do that. You don't need to apologize. It's a fucked up female habit. You don't need to be sorry for anything ever.
Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is?
I don't have rage issues.
I have nothing to prove to you.
When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
I say when it comes to stardom and Lauren, there are no accidents.
Hi, Karen Peterson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Citizen Dame, the podcast where we're all fine. Everything's fine. I am your host right now, Lauren Humphreys Brooks, and with me, as always, is Karen Peterson. Hello, Karen.
Hello.
How are you doing this fine Saturday morning?
Oh my gosh, I'm so tired, but for once it's not because I'm a middle-aged woman.
It kind of is. It kind of is.
Part of it. Yeah. I guess it is, but
like...
in a different way. Oh man. The thing about nowadays, you buy concert tickets months before you go to the concert, and then you forget that you have a concert coming up because you've got like life to live. So this week on, I think Monday or Tuesday, I get a phone call from my friend. She's like, "Are you ready for Friday?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. We're going to see New Kids on the Block on Friday." So I was out very, very late last night. So late that it was this morning when I got home. And it was great. It was a really, really fun show. It was at the Kia Forum in LA, which was the location of the very first concert I ever went to in 1992 when it was Garth Brooks on his first world tour.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And this is not the first time I've seen New Kids. I've seen them. I think this is the fourth time I've seen them now, which is funny because it's like I'm making up for all the times I didn't get to go when I was a kid. But they put on a really good show. It was so fun. It's vibrant, and they have a new album that just came out, I don't know, a month or two ago that is actually really fun. It's a good one. And so a lot of the music this time was from that instead. I mean, they still do their big old hits, but so it was just a good blend and just a good time. And then afterwards, so I was with one friend, and then we had another friend who was also there, just not sitting with us. And so afterwards we met up with her and her group, and she was like, "Okay, let's go find the tour bus." We were like, okay. So we found where the buses were, and we waited forever to just even get a glimpse of them. And a couple security guards came by, and they're like, "Oh no, they left hours ago." We're like, "The concert ended half an hour ago." "No, they didn't." So, anyway, eventually I did get to see one of them when he was leaving. And he drove by in his own car because he lives in LA. So he like just was like driving home, driving himself, which was really funny. But anyway, so I got to see him, and it was funny because he was also the one that I always liked the most, Joey McIntyre.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I know that name.
Yeah. And then after that, it just became like, oh my gosh, it's so late. Who knows how much longer this is going to be? Maybe like a couple of them probably really had left already. And so my friend that I went with, she and I ended up, we're like, let's just go ahead and go. We're tired. So we left. And as soon as we got back to her house, which was like 45 minutes later, our other friend had stuck around, and she sent us a picture that she had gotten with Donnie Wahlberg. So I was like, oh man. But I don't know if I had another hour in me, so it's okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So, but it was a good time. It was a good time. And it's one of those things, like I didn't get to see them when I was 14, but I get to see them when I'm in my 40s. And I feel like it's just as fun now as it would have been back then.
I think that that's very cool. Yeah, I was too young for New Kids on the Block. New Kids on the Block
Yeah.
was ahead of my time. I was in sync Backstreet Boys era.
Mhm.
I was never into boy bands in the way that some of my friends were.
I'm shocked. That seems
I
like
did
totally your
I
personality.
liked In Sync. I liked Backstreet. Like some of those songs are just like a part of my DNA, I think.
Yeah.
But it was never like I was never like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with them or I need to go see them or like anything like that.
You didn't have
Um,
posters of Justin Timberlake and Lance Bass up on your wall.
I did not, amazingly enough. Although if I had to choose, I was like JC. It's definitely JC. JC.
I've met him. He was so nice.
He seems like a nice guy. Like he seems like
Yeah.
one of the ones that was more kind of down to earth and everything.
Mhm.
Yeah. So also Savage Garden. I liked Savage Garden.
I loved Savage Garden.
Yeah. Like I
They were
still like
great.
honestly of all of those groups, I still like Savage Garden the best. I think they're the most interesting. But
Yeah. Oh yeah. So
and
much
then
fun.
and I did very briefly have a 98 degrees thing.
Well, so did 98 Degrees briefly have a
Very
thing.
briefly.
So you probably were a fan for the entirety of their popularity.
Definitely 98 degrees. What was the other one? There was a British one as well. Five, I think it was called.
I don't know that one.
I'll have
I've
to
heard
send
of
you
5 Seconds of Summer, but they're more recent.
No, like five was like they were the British, one of the British versions. Obviously there were other British ones, but I remember they like briefly had a crossover and into the United States and like yeah, so I liked them as well. But
Look at that. Yeah, I don't even think I've ever heard of them.
I will
Maybe
have
I've heard some of their music, but
you may have heard one or two, but When the Lights Go Out was one of their big hits. Like that was the one that kind of crossed the Atlantic. Because it was more part of it was that it was more sexual than a lot of the other like in singing the Backstreet Boys, there was definitely sexuality there, but I think that five was just like, taking your clothes off and things like that. It was much more like risque.
Oh, they were like Color Me Bad.
Maybe, I don't know.
Oh my gosh, you don't know Color Me Bad?
No.
Oh man. So they were a band when I was in high school, and I didn't understand why my mom had problems with me listening to their songs like I Wanna Sex You Up, which was on the radio.
I think I do know that song actually. Yeah, I was into the Beatles when I was in middle school. I had a crush on John Lennon. That was my thing. Like, I'm sorry, so you hear John Lennon sing Twist and Shout, but like, why would you want to listen to boy bands at that point?
Well, it's so funny because growing up, my mom was a Beach Boys fan, not a Beatles fan.
Ooh.
And so we listened to the Beach Boys in our house. And so I was older than most people before I knew who the Beatles were. And I love them. I love their music. It's incredible. But yeah, I came to them much later. So I think the Beach Boys is part of why. And I mean, the Beach Boys also play their own instruments and stuff, but they were an actual band. But I think it's the Beach Boys are part of what inspired my boy band love. Because they just feel more boy bandish than the Beatles do.
Yeah, they do, and it's sort of the harmonizing, the way that they harmonize and stuff like that. They have softer, gentler voices, whereas like the Beatles are a bit rougher. Yeah. Anyways, moving on. We're not going to just reminisce on all of the various boy bands and crushes, except we kind of are.
We're going to talk about another boy crush.
So for this week, we decided to start off our first episode of July with another episode about a certain Mr. Tom Cruise.
Yeah, we did.
Who is, I mean, I think that we all acknowledge that he's one of the biggest Hollywood stars ever. Mm-hmm. And of course, Karen loves him dearly. And so we're going to talk about a couple of his films, some really good films too. I have to say, these are all excellent films.
He has very few that are not.
Okay.
No, it's really true. He's made like 45, 46 movies now. And, I mean, you look at the filmography of someone with a similar movie count, like, I don't know, Tom Hanks, and there are some duds in there, And with Tom Cruise, there are two, but there's so much fewer than most stars that have that many movies, like really, he only has like two or three that I would say aren't great, and only one that I would say is really, really bad. And that's because more to do with his lack of interest in making that movie. It really shows through.
Well, that's, what, one of the things I do have to say about Tom Cruise, I'm not as big a fan of his as you are, but one of the things I have to say about him is that he definitely gives off the vibe of someone who is very invested in the work that he's doing. So he is very, like, whether it's, a big flashy action thriller like Mission Impossible, or whether it's something that's a lot more cerebral or more kind of like personal, he you get the sense from his performances that he's taking it seriously. He is treating this, it isn't something that he's phoning in. And I do think that there's some films that, like, I see like Tom Hanks in, where he seems to be phoning it in. And that's fine. Like, there are times when actors will just take a role because they take a role, or it turns out to not be the role that they really thought it was going to be, all sorts of things. But Cruise really does seem to be invested in the work that he's doing in every single role that I've seen him in. And to take all of that seriously, not just in terms of the action, but in terms of just his performances. And that does make a difference, I think, in the way that he comes off on screen.
Yeah. And the only movie of his, and I've seen all of them multiple times, and the only one of his that I look at and I feel like I'm not getting that from him, where he's really invested in the role, is Jack Reacher 2. Which is so weird, but because they didn't have to do a sequel to that, but that's the one movie where it feels like he's just there because he has some sort of contractual obligation with the studio, and he's not invested in it at all. And so, yeah.
Well, you do have to say, the three films we're going to talk about today, he is very invested in. Yes. And in fact gives great performances in all of them. Very different films as well. They're all thrillers. And they're all by different filmmakers, but also by great filmmakers. So the three films that we're going to talk about today are A Few Good Men from 1992, Minority Report from 2002, and Collateral from 2004. And this is like an interesting mix of films because they, like I said, they're all thrillers. They're all made by great filmmakers. They have a great casts, like really deep casts, all of them. But they're still very different, and they're different kinds of action and different kinds of performances that Cruise is giving. So let's start with A Few Good Men, which was directed by Rob Reiner and written by Aaron Sorkin. And it's a courtroom drama. It's a legal drama. And it stars Tom Cruise as a Navy lawyer who gets called into to argue a case about two Marines who claim that they were ordered to give a code red to a fellow Marine during training, and essentially wound up killing him on accident. And so they're being accused of murder. And initially there's this whole conflict about, like, we can get their sentence reduced, et cetera, but it becomes clearer and clearer that the question becomes, were these guys actually ordered to do something? So they were given an order that they felt they could not disobey, or did they kind of do this off their own bat and accidentally or on purpose wound up killing another guy? And so it's an interesting film because the sympathy lies very much with kind of the Marines themselves, but also this whole idea of following orders and who is meant to follow orders and whether or not you can question those orders. And so it gets increasingly complicated as the film goes on. And you've got kind of Cruise, who's playing this character he's sort of brash and, like, he doesn't take things very seriously. And then he begins to take this very seriously. And realizing that, this is more complicated than just following orders. And it's more complicated than just two guys who were told to do something and did it versus two guys who decided to do something. And of course, you've got a fantastic cast backing that up. I mean, you've got like Demi Moore, Kevin Bacon, Kevin Pollak, Kiefer Sutherland, Jack Nicholson, who steals every scene that he's in.
Yes.
And is like, so famous and so delightful in this part. He's so hateable, and yet I like love every second he's on screen. And I like the conflict that develops between him and Cruise as well. Like there's this wonderful, not just in terms of their characters, but like even just in terms of acting style. And it builds so well. There's like this headbutting that goes on, especially in the courtroom scene, that works so well with the two of them and their personas. So Karen, what are your feelings about this film? Why do you love it? Do you hate it?
Well, I love it. And
no.
I know, shocking. I actually saw this movie when it came out. And I was in high school. This actually was one of, not the only, but this was one of the reasons why I originally wanted to go to law school. I was so I loved this movie so much, and I loved this idea of, because Tom plays a lawyer, but he very quickly comes to realize that the reason he was handed this case is because he has a history of plea bargains. He doesn't take the law seriously. Part of that is because, as you kind of learn from conversations that happen, he's been in the shadow of his father, who was this superstar attorney, and he kind of went into the law because he felt like he should or was supposed to, but it wasn't something that he was passionate about. And over the course of this film, you see that passion ignite, and you see him just come alive as he embraces this thing that he's decided to give his life to, even though he didn't really know why. And I don't know, that just really, it just was so exciting to me. And that was where I thought, maybe law is where I want to go. Eventually I took the LSAT and decided law was not where I wanted to go. but that kind of, it started with the combination of this movie and some other things. But I was just, I was really drawn, not just to Cruise. I really love just the dialogue here. I mean, it's Aaron Sorkin wrote the script. This is when Aaron Sorkin was at the height of his powers, and it's good. It's intriguing. It really gets to the heart of, as much as, say, Top Gun was just like a huge rallying, like propaganda. What's the word I'm looking for? Like a recruitment video for the Navy. A Few Good Men kind of pulls back a little bit. I mean, I'm sure there were still some enlistments, but it kind of pulls back a little bit and shows that there's a limit to how much we should be really not embracing, but like elevating and praising the military, and that there are problems, deep problems that go high up. And that's really what that movie is about. It's not just about the death of this young kid. It's about the people that kind of caused that to happen, and how much they do not care about it. And it's this enforcement of, and you do have to say, what comes out is that they were never intended to kill the guy. Like that was never an intentional it's
thing.
Collateral damage.
Yeah. But they don't, but the point is, you have to enforce, right? You have to enforce people. You have to enforce like the chain of command and all of this. And one of the things that I like about the film is that it mentions, this whole thing about just following orders, right? And it mentions things like the Nuremberg trials, and this whole issue of like, is that what we are as well? Like, is that an excuse? Can you make as a Marine, can you make can you receive an order and say that is a morally incorrect order and I will not follow it? And what transpires is the way that that Jessup, played by Jack Nicholson, runs his base, is that it's very much like you follow orders and that's it. And I like that actually winds up getting used against him. This whole thing, because like it was interesting rewatching this one, because it's been a long time since I've seen this film, so I remembered some of the big scenes, but I did not remember all of the beats. And the brilliance of that final confrontation with Jessup, and kind of the way he gets talked into essentially saying the truth and telling the truth about what happened, because he's just like, no one does anything without my orders, basically. It's like, okay, so that means that they should not have behaved without your orders, right? Because no one disobeys your orders.
And watching Jack Nicholson, like his character make this connection of like, oh shit, I kind of just stepped into it a little bit, and then trying to fix it, but also still having that ego. Great performance from Nicholson too.
It's great, and it also, there's like the psychological depth to it, because with I'm trying to remember the Cruise character's name. Sorry,
Daniel Caffey.
Caffey. So like there's this whole thing that Caffey, has good emotional insight and psychological insight into people. He's just not really using it, and then he starts getting encouraged to use it as like, you knew. Like it was this whole thing about like, why did you ask him about the transfer order? Like, you could have asked anybody, but you asked him because you wanted to see his reaction. And that's what he builds it on. That's what he winds up doing, is that he essentially traps, very legally, it traps Jessup into confessing, into saying, yes, I gave the order, right? And he does it because he understands the psychology that is at work behind him. He reads him correctly. And it's really brilliant because it works so well, and it the film itself builds to that point in such a clear way, and in such a believable way. So it's a great, it's a great example of how to do a courtroom drama really well, and how to really make the viewer invested, and to also kind of get into the ins and outs and the complications of it, that it isn't just about law, but also about military code and codes of honor and things like that. And it's a very smartly made film, and smartly scripted, like you say.
I still can't believe, like, so it gets nominated for 4 Oscars, but I cannot believe the screenplay was not one of them.
It's such a great screenplay. Like, it has so many variables at work, and like, you're like, how are they going to get these guys out of this? Like, are they, how's this all going to work?
Right. And that's the thing too, is you understand, you're sympathizing with these two young kids. I mean, they're young kids. They're early in their career in the Marines, and this has happened to them. And one of them is just so innocent and sweet, and you get the sense that he would not hurt anybody unless he absolutely had to, and then they find themselves in this situation. And so we're on their side, because because we've also gotten the benefit as an audience of seeing this conversation that Nicholson's character has with his 2 top guys, with Kiefer Sutherland and JT Walsh. And so we know what's going on in his mind. So we know from early on that he's really the villain. But yet you still don't know what is going to happen in this trial, like what the outcome is going to be, and you don't fully know what it should be either. And so until the jury reads the verdict, and then it's like, okay, like, I'm sad for them that they end up getting discharged, but at the same time, it's like, that does feel like the right thing, So it's also just overall really a satisfying conclusion too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that we should talk a little bit about Demi Moore. Who is, kind of, she's sort of she's the more experienced in a certain sense. She's definitely smarter about the law,
And she takes it so much more seriously.
And she takes it a lot more seriously. And their relationship is great because one of the things you mentioned to me on Slack, and I absolutely agree with you, is that there was a lot of complaint about like there not being a romance that develops between the two of them. And I love that so much. I love, and probably like maybe when I was a teenager, so I was just like, no, why don't they kiss? It's like, well, but that's not what this story is about. First of all, we don't need a romance in there. There is chemistry between the two of them. There is like flirtation a little bit, but that's not the story. It isn't about, you know, that there isn't like a subplot about their relationship. It's very much about this case and developing the case and developing the characters around it. And it treats, I like the fact that the film treats her, it doesn't ignore her femininity. It doesn't pretend that like her being a woman has like no impact on the choices that are being made, on the way that she's treated, on the way that the different military men treat her. But it also doesn't make it into such an issue that like, okay, now we have to shoehorn in a romance between the two leads, right? And it's really good. It balances that so well and allows for there to be that chemistry without going like, and now they're gonna, you know, it doesn't even end with like, oh, now they're gonna go on a date or anything like that. It's just like, well, they might, maybe, but that's not part of the story.
Yeah. Well, okay, first of all, I don't know if as a teenager you would have been like, they should kiss, because I was a teenager when I saw this and I very much understood that no, they shouldn't. That's not what they're here for. I remember people complaining about that, grown adults complaining about it. And I was just like, what are you people talking about? That's not even what this movie is about. You know, it wouldn't make sense. And I really think that if it had gone that direction of them, you know, making out or more than that even, I think it would have ruined the chemistry that's there. Once you take away that sexual tension, sometimes it actually has the unintended effect of really making your characters kind of giving them nowhere else to go, and no more of that energy that kind of fuels some really good scenes. And that's the thing, is like Tom and Demi have this great chemistry, and the fact that they never act on anything, whether they're attracted to each other or not, I think is part of what fuels it right up until the end. So, and it's part of what makes their story believable, in like when they have this big fight and toward the end, and she wants him to put Jessup on the stand, and he's just like, you're insane, and they have that big fight and she storms off, and then he realizes that's the right thing to do. I think that scene would have landed so much differently if their night that they go out to dinner had ended with, you know, any sort of romance happening between the two of them. And it just would have felt like a completely different movie. And I mean, looking back now, I kind of understand where less savvy audience members would be calling for that, because this is in an era where, you know, Demi is doing things like Ghost. It's just like not long after Ghost, and it's, you know, in the time where like Indecent Proposal and Disclosure are coming along. And so she was very much treated as this sex symbol, and that's kind of what she was what was expected of her on screen. And instead, she's in this very serious role, playing this very straight, serious character. And I think it just wasn't what people were expecting. But I'm so glad that they didn't, you know, give the people what they thought they wanted, because they think it would have been completely the wrong move.
I absolutely agree with you. It would have also, I think, reduced her to a trope. She would have become the love interest, right, of the lead, because Tom Cruise is very much the lead, but she's close to a co-lead. And it would have like kind of turned that into like, okay, now she's the love interest, and so this whole thing then gets complicated with personal feelings rather than the conflict that is about the law, right? And you know, and also some of those other tropes of like, oh, he got her with his boyish charm kind of thing. And you're just like, and he is charming. He is like very charismatic. One of the things I remarked on just watching this film, I was just like, damn, he just owns the screen when he walks. Like he's just like, the reason why he's a movie star really is that like charisma that is just like there. You watch him, right?
It's so true.
And you watch him in scenes where he's acting with some fantastic people, right? Including Demi Moore. But the fact that he is so like riveting just immediately is important. It's important to the character, but it's also just important to like the way that we respond to him.
Yeah.
And like adding in that romance, I think would have kind of reduced her role and kind of made it more into this like, okay, she's now a function of his story versus being a part of the story herself.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to talk about this film? It's so well done. It is still like, I've seen it a couple of times now, rewatching it, I was just like, oh, this is great. This really is just like a great solid courtroom drama, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that I would add really is that it should have been nominated for at least 3 more Oscars. And it's way more memorable than Unforgiven.
It is actually. I like Unforgiven, but yeah, I agree with you.
Unforgiven is fine, and I'm not mad that it won Best Picture, but you know, like, I'm sorry, Al Pacino, Scent of a Woman, come on. Are we kidding? That wasn't even a leading role. Tom Cruise should have been nominated in that category.
He should, I will say he should have been. He gives a fantastic performance. Like, yeah. he really does.
And he should have been nominated. Aaron Sorkin should have been nominated, and I think Rob Reiner should have too.
It's a really great film, and it is fun to watch. I'm trying to remember where it's available. I think it's on Tubi right now. It's
at my house. Come on over.
And also on Tubi. I believe Tubi.
My apartment is pretty small. You'd have to come over one at a time.
Actually, it might be the Roku channel that it's streaming on right now. Because I watch it on one of those that has commercials every like 10 minutes or whatever. But
okay. Well, and also, I mean, if anybody listening, it's apparently on AMC Plus right now.
Okay.
But also, if anybody does still subscribe to any sort of cable service, it frequently pops up on TV. So still,
that's probably the first time I saw it, to be honest, was it popped up on TV.
It plays so well in the theater or on TV. It's, it really does.
And I do have to say that like this is 1992 and the whole thing revolves around Gitmo Base. And I like, as soon as that came out, I was just like, oh dear. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Like, all right.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, it's so good.
It is such a good film. So moving on, we're going to talk about Minority Report from 2002, which is based on a Philip K. Dick novella, which I've never read, but it feels very Philip K. Dick. And of course, it stars Tom Cruise and Colin Farrell, Samantha Morton, Max von Sydow, who, as soon as he's on the screen, I'm just like, oh yeah, he's definitely the villain. Like, he definitely turns out to be behind all of this shit. It's Max von Sydow. And this revolves around a pre-crime police program that uses psychics, precogs, who are people who are gifted with precognition, to predict murders and to stop murders before they happen. And the chief of this unit is John Anderton, which I do find a little bit funny, given that this is only a couple of years after The Matrix, and is played by Tom Cruise. And what winds up happening is that he gets implicated in a murder and has to go on the run and kind of figure out, is he going to commit the crime? Why is he going to commit the crime? Because it seems to be a person that he's never met. And is there any way that he can actually prevent this from happening? So is this predetermined, in other words? It is directed by a guy named Steven Spielberg, which I completely forgotten about as I started watching this film. And I was sitting there going like, man, this sets it up so well. Like, you get the world building really fast. Like, you just establishes everything in like the first 10 minutes. It's such good narrative storytelling. And I was like, who directed this? And I looked, I was like, oh, well, that explains it. I had just forgotten that this was a Spielberg film. Yeah, so this is a really interesting film, especially given that it's 2002, and it's I don't want to say prescient because obviously the film takes place in 2054. And obviously we do not have this kind of a program, but some of the technology and some of the movements ahead in technology are like weirdly related to each other. And there is the sense of like, not so much that I think we're going to wind up with, psychics predicting crimes in the future, but it's one of those things that is almost a little too realistic at times. It's like, yeah, I could see us trying to do something like this.
I actually have some insight on that.
Yeah.
Because that was very intentional. So when Spielberg sat down to work on this, he didn't write the script, but when he had the script in hand and he sat down to, okay, let's make this movie. How do we make this look like a world that we could live in 2054? He pulled in experts from all sorts of industries. So he brought in automakers. That is actually Lexus. I think it's Lexus. Their design for the 2054 model of their car. They like have that planned out already. He brought in advertising and marketing experts, like fashion, all kinds of people to really just talk about what direction are these industries heading. And so it looks so real because it's based in real projections from real experts on where these things are headed. So so yeah, all the targeted advertising.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
man.
I was like watching that. I was just like, okay. I mean, we don't get that in the sense that like a billboard doesn't change in Times Square when I walk past it, right?
Yeah,
but no, but like, yeah, exactly. Like the number of targeted ads that we now get is like, oh, you search for X, Y, and Z, which I always find funny because it always misunderstands completely my shopping habits.
Completely.
But it is that like that relationship, just like, yeah, you got it pretty close, actually.
Yeah. It's very accurate in terms of the ideas behind the things that are in it, even if it's not exactly what it looks like right now.
Yeah, exactly. I do think that the cars and everything are a little bit funny. The very futuristic kind of thing, and then of course the moving the things around on the screen, that like with the VR hands and whatever, which got parodied so much after this film came out.
Right, but have you seen the the what is that Meta device?
I know.
Yeah. It's I mean, it basically, you can do that in your living room with this VR headset thing where you can just have your desktop computer like in front of your face and you can just move stuff around. It's insane.
Kind of very creepy.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and also this whole notion of particularly of the surveillance society, right? So you've got people who are getting their eyes scanned every time they get on the subway. Every time that they pass by ads, things that there are cameras everywhere that are tracking you and scanning you and keeping watch on you. And then because you've got the central character who's essentially having to escape from things that he's been a participant in,
right?
And realizing that maybe a lot of this is not such a great thing, and all of those kind of world building elements that are then worked into that. And okay, so if you were living in a society where your eyes are consistently scanned all the time, how do you vanish? How do you disappear from that? You get an eye replacement. Right, you get this like underground surgery to switch eyes with someone, but then he also keeps his own. That's such a weird thing. But it's just really well done, and so it's interesting because it's this great setup for something that's very believable, like the idea of being able to predict a murder and stop it before it happens. But then what do you do? Is there a possibility of changing your mind, right? Could the people that they've arrested have actually made a different decision than the one that has been predicted? Right. And then it gets into the use of these three people who are precognitive, but do they ever make a mistake? Is there a minority report? Is there someone who actually said, actually there's an alternative? and then it kind of it builds throughout the film, and that, as well as being a good mystery of like, why is this happening, who is the person he's going to murder, why is the murder going to take place, all of those things. It's such a well structured and paced film, and Cruise again anchors it in such a brilliant way.
Yeah. Well, and all this is happening too while you've got this Colin Farrell's character who's there looking at the feasibility of this, because this program has been working very well in the DC area and now they want to take it national, and he's there to basically poke the holes and find where the problems are. And very quickly things start to unravel after he shows up, which makes him a good red herring character too, because people want to assume that he's the bad guy, but it's super obvious it's Max von Sydow,
because he's Max von Sydow.
Exactly.
He's Max von Sydow.
Exactly. But yeah, I think I mean, apart from the world building and then just having this fun kind of cat and mouse chase with Tom Cruise, I think it also does ask some really important philosophical questions, not just if you could change, like if you know what's going to happen. Well, I mean, I think that's one of it. Like if you know what's going to happen, would you change your mind? Like in the opening sequence, we see this husband who is supposed to leave for work, figures out that his wife's been having an affair, catches them, and then in a fit of rage and passion is about to murder them. And that's what he gets taken away and convicted of, is the future murder of his wife and her lover. But if someone had come in and said, hey buddy, we have these precogs, this is what they see, would he do that? Probably not.
Yeah, exactly. It's that whole concept of predetermination that you're going, and that's the argument that happens throughout the film of, is there any way to actually change that future?
Right.
And then can you really arrest someone for the crime, for a crime they haven't committed?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that they can say, I wasn't going to do it, right? That I wasn't. And how can you prove that they weren't? Because so it has to rely on this fact. And one of the things that gets reiterated is that they're never wrong, right? The precogs are never wrong. It's just like, well, but they might be wrong if
occasionally they disagree.
Yeah. And at that point, it's like, but they also might be wrong if you are always preventing the crimes, then there's no, at a certain point you never see if they might have been wrong, because you've prevented the crime before the crime was committed or not committed.
Right.
So it is this really interesting kind of circuitous thing, and then asks questions about that kind of surveillance society. And I think because it's so heavily based, it feels so real. It feels like a real possibility. I think that makes it that much more immediate and that much more interesting, because it is one of those things that you can actually be like, okay, yeah, this doesn't take that much of a leap of logic to be, this there is a potential future there.
Yeah. Well, and it's also great, another great arc for Cruise as this character, as when he goes and has that meeting with Lois Smith. I can't think of her character name in this, but the doctor who helped start pre-crime. And that's when he finds out about the existence of this minority report where one of the three precogs, who turns out to be the strongest, which is the woman, so he finds out about this, so that's when he realizes there's a possibility that he's locked up people who were innocent and were never going to commit a crime. And he has this kind of, as he's on the run for being accused of a murder that he hasn't committed, and he's now on the other side of that, he's having this crisis of conscience, realizing maybe this work that I've devoted my life to, that I've had a good reason for, because he had lost his own son, maybe it's not the great, brilliant idea that I thought it was. But it takes him actually having to go through that experience because of the loss that he's had.
Yeah.
he has to have that experience to really see the reality of what he's been doing to people.
Yep. It's a good film. It's a very paranoid film. I actually watched this around about the same time that the Supreme Court decision just recently got released.
Oh dear.
And so I was like in the middle of watching this film. I think I'd watched half of it, and then the next day, and I was like, oh, that's great.
Awesome.
I'm feeling good. But yeah, it is. I mean, I do also have to say the CGI, the special effects, etc., are so well integrated in this film as well, especially for a 2002 movie. It's not, there are a few places where it's a little bit wobbly, but it is very well done. And I think a lot of it is because a lot of the action is real, a lot of the special effects are practical effects. And so you get kind of this blending of things that works really, really well.
You also see, just back to Tom for a minute, sorry.
No, of course.
Sorry, not sorry. But you also really see, and I think we're going to see this even more in Collateral. We talk about that, but I mean, he's really good with action, and he's great working in action sequences, but you really see how much he incorporates dance into his action work and his stunt work in this movie. You really see it, I think, more maybe than a lot of his earlier films. But I especially think of just even the way he's manipulating the images on the screen in the opening. And there's just this, you know, I mean, like you mentioned, that's been parodied and replicated many times, including in the movie Replicas with Keanu Reeves. But there's just this like lyrical way that he moves when he's doing that, and it's beautiful to watch. It really is mesmerizing to just watch him work he's really working with nothing because it's all visual effects, but he just makes it so believable and just so fascinating. And yeah, I love watching the way that he moves and the way that he controls the screen, not just with the way that he speaks, but with honestly with the way he moves too.
Yeah, he's a very physical actor.
Yeah.
Regardless, like even in A Few Good Men, where he's not doing any action, right? But he's a very physical actor. So you've got like the things with like the baseball bat, you can't handle the truth, I want the truth, that kind of thing. The physical movements are very much there, and he's not. It's interesting because Minority Report, I believe, was originally considered as a vehicle for Arnold Schwarzenegger, and
I did not know that.
And Schwarzenegger is a very like heavy physical actor, right? He's muscular, he's powerful. And Cruise is a lot more not live, but like you said, dance like he's much more graceful in his movements, and it isn't that heaviness and that intensity in quite the same way as someone like Schwarzenegger, or even someone like Bruce Willis or similar stars. That there isn't a heaviness to him, and it also means that it's very believable when he's doing some of the stunts. First of all, because he is generally actually doing them, but it's very believable when he's doing them because you believe that this is a guy who's capable of that, right? And isn't muscle bound and is much more kind of lithe and elegant and able to move in the way that he does, because it's him. That's like he's got a looseness to him, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And also there was one point where I was like, Colin Farrell, you can't outrun Tom Cruise. Don't try to outrun Tom Cruise, Colin Farrell.
Many have tried, all have failed.
Props to you, Colin Farrell, but it's not going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
So let's move on to like another really, really great performance from Cruise is 2004's Collateral, which is a neo-noir. It's called a neo-noir action thriller, which I think is a good description.
Yeah, that sums it up.
Directed by Michael Mann and starring Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx and Jada Pinkett Smith, who I'd forgotten was in this, and Mark Ruffalo, who I also forgot was in this. and they actually have fairly small roles, which is amazing to me. But this is about Max, who's an LA cab driver, played by Jamie Foxx, and is constantly saying that, like, oh, he's actually going to make a limousine service, that this is just a part-time gig, etc. And driving around one night, he picks up a fare, Vincent, played by Tom Cruise, who turns out to be an assassin, who's going around murdering the various witnesses for I think it's a drug cartel guy, I believe played by Javier Bardem. So I'm very much mistaken on that. Very young. Like I was watching.
I forgot he was in it until I was watching it again yesterday, and I was like, wait.
Yeah, I was like,
Javier Bardem.
Is that Javier Bardem? Like he looks different. I don't know. Maybe it's the short hair. Maybe it's just like
I think
because
so,
he's younger or something. But I was like, is that? I think that's Javier Bardem.
It sure is, yeah. But yeah, he's younger and his head is basically shaved. So
yeah. And so this kind of gets into a story where Max gets sucked into this role as basically being Vincent's chauffeur around LA to commit these murders, and it becomes clear that like Max is going to wind up being implicated in this. We also get a bit of the cops and the FBI trying to figure out like who is committing these crimes. They know that someone is an assassin, but Vincent never lets himself be seen. And so there is this like conflict that it becomes clear that, you know, Max is going to wind up being set up for these crimes. This is such an interesting film because the setup, again, it's very simple in a lot of ways. Like it's one of those accidental things. In fact, when Max picks Vincent up, he initially like doesn't respond to him tapping on the window. And so Vincent like is going to walk away and go to another cab. And then Max calls him. Max just like, no. I'm available. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those like just crossing paths at the wrong time. They were in the wrong place. And it devolves into this whole thing. But a lot of the film is very much focused on this interplay between Vincent and Max. And particularly on Cruise being so fast. Again, it's that charisma, that fascination, and so cold at the same time. And he does not play cold parts a lot. He plays serious parts, but there's a coldness to Vincent that is also fascinating at the same time. It's a really interesting role for him.
He also rarely plays a villain.
Yeah.
I think maybe 4 villainous roles. He's the villain, obviously, in Interview with the Vampire. And then this one, I would say he plays a villainous character, even if he's not fully a villain, in Magnolia. And then Rock of Ages, he's an antagonist in that too. And then I guess Tropic Thunder as well. But in that, he's not really a villain. He's just like he's just a bad guy because he's a Hollywood producer. But yeah, he rarely plays a villain, which is why when he does, it's so like you just really take notice because it really is such a different thing for him. And in this, I mean, there's so much that just works that you wouldn't necessarily think would work. I mean, Silver Fox Tom Cruise, it's the only movie where he has not had his like perfectly colored dark hair and, you know, and then like the suit, and it's just this whole package that's very different. I think this is also the only time he's worked with Michael Mann, who makes very stylish thrillers, or stylized, and it's such an interesting and good pairing. And then this two-hander of Vincent versus Max just really is also very, very good. But I like how, I mean, we know that Max is the main character of this story because we're with him for a bit before Vincent ever gets in that cab, and we have this whole conversation between him and Jada Pinkett Smith, who he picks up at the airport, and he has to take her to this building downtown. And of course, that does end up coming back around at the end. spoilers for a 20-year-old movie. But if you, yeah, so like I remember having a conversation with someone a long time ago, probably when this came out, about, oh, it's just too big of a coincidence that he would end up driving the person that like is last on Vincent's list, and that he would end up driving both of them. And I'm like, but it's not a big coincidence. It would be a big coincidence if he hadn't picked Vincent up right where he drops off this other person, because Vincent had been there like scoping out the building, and like they actually, I think that's one of the things about this that works, is it's really well thought through of what would the logistics be. It turns out to be kind of a coincidence that it's Vin or Max, but it's just basically this would have happened to whatever cab driver had been there at the time. This is Max's story.
Yeah, it's coincidental, but it makes sense. It all fits together. Like, of course, so he picks up Vincent at the building that Vincent is scoping out, and this woman who is a lawyer. Like, yeah, that is something that can reasonably happen in real life,
especially, and this is why it works, is because this is very definitely set in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
In a place like New York, where everybody's hopping in cabs all the time, at least that's my experience of being in New York. Like, there's cabs everywhere. In LA, it's not like that. And you kind of have to call ahead. Now everybody takes Ubers, but you don't just walk outside and hail a cab. It's very different. It's trickier to actually get one. So it makes even more sense. There's less options. He doesn't have a whole bunch of choices right there.
Yeah, well, and even I think that like Max he's sitting by the side of the curb. He's sitting right in front of the building, which is where you would sit when you drop someone off. And like I say, Vincent almost walks away to another cab that's parked a little bit further down. So and Max is the one who calls him back. So it's very noirish in the sense that like there is this element of fate that is running through everything. And that is, a staple of noir. It's a staple of neo-noir that it's basically you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Right. And all of these little incidents, if you'd driven a little slower, if you'd taken a different road, if you'd taken this street instead of that street, everything would have been different.
If he had gone the way that Jada wanted him to go from the airport.
Yeah. No, all of those things like build up to it. And the film makes a point of that. Like, we see those different choices that could have been made that are very minor choices, but that all lead into him being the one to drive Vincent. There's even a point where like he is letting Vincent out on the first one, and Vincent is like offering him money, saying like, I want you to drive me around. He could say no at that point.
He tries to.
Yeah. And then he agrees. Like he's just like, no, well, okay, that's a lot of money. Yeah, okay. Right. And that's what finally kind of traps him into the whole film. It's what traps him into this fate. But all of those points are like choices that can be made. And a lot of the film is about that element of choice versus fate, and the doomedness almost that happens to a lot of noir heroes, of like, you were going to do this,
Right.
And yeah, it's so well done. And Cruise, yeah, you're right. Like, Cruise is so we're so used to him being a hero that like when he's not, it's very discombobulating. But you're also, again, talking about that way that like he just grabs the audience's attention, and you want to see what happens next. One of the best scenes is the scene in the jazz club.
Yes.
When they're sitting at this table, and we know how dangerous Vincent is, and Max knows too. But they're sitting at this table. It's just three people. It's Tom Cruise, Jamie Foxx, and I don't remember who the guy is.
The owner of the jazz club.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name?
But so they're sitting there at this table, and they're having this conversation about Miles Davis and jazz and stuff, and it builds so well because we know, like, it's a wonderful example of suspense. Really, we know that, like, okay, Vincent is here to kill this guy, but how is that all going to work? And so much of that is dependent on, Cruz and this sort of bizarre philosophy that Vincent has going, and the sense of like who he is as a character. And he's a sociopath. Like at one point, Max basically says that to him. He's just like, "Oh, I've got a sociopath in my cap. Oh, all right, there's something missing in you, right?"
Mhm.
But it's so much more than that. There's like this questioning even that's going on between the two of them about their own identities. And it's a really interesting relationship that's depicted, and so much of that depends on Cruz's ability to get that combination of coldness but also logic and charisma all kind of packaged in the same way.
Yeah, there's also just the right amount of humor blended in as well. And it's not a lot, but when it happens, it's like it's just great. Like with the first murder, when Max is waiting in his cab out in the alley with no idea what Vincent's doing inside, and then this body falls onto his car and smashes the windshield, and Vincent comes out, and Max makes the realization of, oh my gosh, wait, hold on, you killed this guy. And so he's trying to convince Vincent to just let him go. The way Tom just goes, "You're not going to tell anybody, right?" It's like, it's so funny. And Max like, no, of course not. And then just get in the fucking car. Like,
yeah,
obviously I can't let you go. What are you thinking? But it's just the way that it plays out. It's really funny because you like knowing just a little bit about Vincent that we know by this point, there's no way he's letting this guy off. Not now, but yeah, I enjoy that.
Yeah, it does. It has those little injections of humor, and a lot
when they go visit Max's mom,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
Like that whole conversation, just like, oh my god. And you're just like, yeah, if I met that guy, I'd be like, oh, he's really nice and charming. Like,
yeah.
Like, just like, it's so nice to meet you. Like, he's talking to her about her son, and like, and so some of those little touches of like, you're gonna bring her flowers. Like, because that's what you do. This woman carried you. And it's honest. Like, it isn't like, he's not really messing with him. He's just being like, no, this is what you do. What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's really an interesting, like, kind of combination of things. And it helps to alleviate some of the tension.
Yes.
Because you get a little bit of that humor, and it's like, okay, this is, it's not that everything's okay, but I don't have to be completely clenched the entire time.
Right. Yeah. Well, and then there's just other things too, like Mark Ruffalo's character, who he plays this cop who's been working on this case that involves all the people that Vincent's going around taking out, and pretty soon realizes this isn't a coincidence, something's happening. So he's trying to scope it out, zeroes in on this cab driver. And it's interesting because he tells a story about this happening, I think, up in San Francisco, something similar, where this cab driver had gone around killing people, but he always thought maybe the cabbie was innocent. And so it's like, oh, wait, was that Vincent too? is this just kind of a thing he does? Yeah, and then you kind of get this sense. I mean, Mark Ruffalo plays this cop, and he's hot on their trail, and it's like, oh, he's gonna be the hero. He's gonna save Max from this situation. No, he does not.
He just gets shot.
He just dies.
He just died. I remember seeing that for the first time and being like, he's just dead. What? And it is, again, it goes back to that element of fate. And that, like, this is weird, the two of them, Vincent and Max, they're intertwined in some way. Like, their fates are connected to each other. It is that element, like, this has to be played out to the end.
Yeah.
There is no way that either one of them are kind of escaping from whatever this is between them until one is dead. And that's very much what happens in the film. and it's really effective. Like it works really well because it's again playing on genre, and then also like it's not like a one-off thing where it's just like one coincidence. It's a whole bunch of different things that are all interconnected.
Yes. I do want to say that there's one thing Vincent gets completely wrong about Los Angeles.
Yes.
when they're talking and he says, "Oh, I read this story about this guy on the MTA and he dies and he rides around for 6 hours and nobody notices." No. That's not how it works in LA. In LA, people noticed that guy. They definitely saw that guy. They just didn't know he was dead and didn't want to bother him. That's really how it works there. We just don't like to bother people.
I mean, you know what? I honestly would probably be true in New York as well. Although I have a feeling, yeah, at some point probably a cop would have tried to hassle him or something like that, and then yeah, but
it depends on if he looks homeless or not. Yeah.
But no, it's true. Just like, oh, that guy's just sitting there. Okay, whatever.
Yeah. And so it's funny that ending where Vincent ends up being the dead guy on the metro. But he's also got blood all over him, so probably someone's gonna say something.
Okay, well, that's the other thing. Okay, so there's like a shootout and they bust windows, like all kinds of things. Yeah. Now, I don't know much about the LA metro system. I did not realize that LA had a metro system. I thought you guys were all like trapped in cars all the time.
No, there is one. It's just nobody uses it.
So maybe that's an explanation here. Yeah. Because first of all, the emptiness of that train, I was like, that is unnatural. No train is ever that empty, but maybe it is in LA.
In LA, it actually, yeah, that tracks. I mean, more people are using it now, but 20 years ago, that was one of the things they were trying to do. They were using all kinds of campaigns to try to get people onto the subway. And it was like, but it doesn't go where I need to go. So what's the point?
Yeah, see, like if I was ever on a train that was that empty in New York, I would be like, there is something really fucked up going on right now, and I'm getting off immediately. Like I would step on and step off. Like, nope.
Yeah.
Not like there's a whole thing in New York that if you get onto an almost empty subway car, there's something wrong. Like there is someone, usually it's because someone has like barfed or tried to fight somebody, or it's just like almost empty subway car indicates something wrong, get off immediately. Don't even fuck with it. Yeah, so watching that, but then like they shoot out windows and things. Is there no driver?
No, there is, and that's the part where it's like, no, that wouldn't happen. There's drivers, and there's also usually police at a lot of the stations too. So yeah, like that part was a little bit much.
Emergency something like something, anything.
Yeah. Also, that station was above ground, which means that there's streets right around it too. So
yeah,
somebody would have seen what was going on and called the cops. Because that's the thing. If we know there's a problem, we call the police here.
You sure? I don't think that is not accurate to my understanding of LA, which is entirely based in 1970s neo-noirs. So
or it's completely lawless. It is the Wild West out here.
I'm telling you, it's good. I expect Chinatown. That's my view.
Ooh, Chinatown. Go to Chinatown when you're here.
Chinatown and The Big Sleep. Like those are the two.
Chinatown looks nothing like the real Chinatown, by the way.
I literally, it's literally like people who say like, oh, New York is like Taxi Driver, right? It's like, no. First of all, Taxi Driver is like 1976.
I will say though, there are elements of Collateral where it's like, oh, this really does feel like an LA movie. And I mean, the streets are a little bit emptier than reality, but there's just enough of it feels. You can really, I can really tell the difference when a movie's actually filmed in LA versus when it's filmed in, say, Toronto or Vancouver, and they pretend that it's LA, not just because of landmarks, but there's just a vibe. And this feels very much like an LA movie. Even things like the coyote running across the street, which is so random, but you get random stuff like that once in a while where it's this reminder of our city is nestled right up into nature, and nature kind of wants their land back. Yeah, so I mean things like that do happen, but yeah, this feels like a very Los Angeles movie, even when you do have elements that would not happen in LA.
Mhm. Well, of course not. There's always that. I do one more thing I want to say is that I love the stylization of this film, and particularly we're talking about like the kind of dance-like movements. But in the one club scene where the shootout in the club scene where
So
like
good.
it's so well choreographed, like everything. You've got this massive crowd, you've got these characters moving through this crowd. We know what the destination is, and we've got multiple kind of characters working within the same space, right? And you know kind of what is this is leading to, maybe, and how is this all going to work? And then when the violence breaks out, it's really fascinating because like some people register it and some people don't. Because it's so packed and there's so much noise and lights and everything, and it's difficult. Like something's happening on the one hand, on the other hand, it's like it takes a long time for the entire crowd to realize that there's like a literal scene of violence going on within all of this, like with guns and cops, etc. And it's so well done and choreographed, and the Cruise's kind of the way that Cruise advances through the crowd and like the crowd practically parts for him. But at the same time he blends in. It's this really interesting dichotomy that develops with his character, especially in that scene.
Yeah. Well, and it really gives you such a good visual look at how Vincent operates and how just totally smooth and cool he is. Not cool like, oh, he's so cool, but just, you know, just like that icy, I have a job to do and I have a singular focus. And he's able, with all the chaos around him, he's able to just shut all that out and just focus on his target. And, you know, when he's shooting and there's people running around, he's able to hit what he's trying to hit, not random bystanders, you know. And
yeah,
it's also a scene that wouldn't work the same way now, just in our modern life where club shootings have become not an uncommon thing. That scene would not work the same way if this movie were made now.
Yeah, probably so. Although, you know, I've been in clubs not where something like that has happened, but where there's like something has happened in one part of the club that you like almost don't register for a long time.
Sure, yeah.
And I agree with you. Something that violent is not going to happen. You know, it's not going to be.
Yeah, if there's gunshots and stuff, like people are out of there immediately nowadays.
Yes.
Because that's just happened too many times in recent years.
Really, that should always be true.
Yes. But any times is too many, but
that kind of like that sense of like something happening in one area and then other people not quite realizing it or processing it, and it taking a long time for it to become a club-wide thing or a space-wide thing. It's realistic in that sense, while at the same time being very stylized.
Yeah.
So any last thoughts on Collateral? It is, again, it's a great film. It is on Peacock right now.
It is. Yeah. Just that it's, you know, actually, yeah, my other thought on that one, because I forgot we talked about this off air, but so Jamie Foxx gets nominated for supporting actor. Trying to find. Yeah, he gets nominated for supporting actor for Collateral. It's the year that he also wins for Ray as lead actor. But like, talk about category fraud. That is Max's movie. He is the lead of that movie. And I remember that being a big argument at the time. And so it's ridiculous that they did that and that Tom Cruise does not get nominated, which I think it's such a great role. And I would be less mad about it if like it hadn't been the whole Clint Eastwood $1 Million Baby year. I hate that movie so much. Clint Eastwood has Tom Cruise's Oscar nomination. If it had been anybody other than Clint Eastwood, I probably wouldn't be so upset. But I just look at that and I'm just like, no. He should not be in that lineup. Tom Cruise should be in that lineup. But also, actually, I think they should be swapped. And I think Tom should have been nominated for supporting actor.
Yeah, I agree. He should have definitely been nominated for supporting actor because I mean, it's kind of it's co-leads in a lot of ways. They're very much like they're balanced for the most part, but it is
Yeah, but you
Max's
can't
story.
you can't say Max is the supporting actor and Vincent is the lead.
No,
It's
not at all. Yeah.
no. If you're gonna say one is lead and one is supporting, it's flipped. It's the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that. I also will say I've never actually seen Million Dollar Baby.
It's terrible. Don't watch it.
It's not high on my list, but I always find it a little funny because people are like, oh, Million Dollar Baby, and everyone has opinions on it. Like, I have no idea. I literally have not seen it.
Oh yeah, no, that anyway. We can talk later about why that movie is so terrible.
So yeah, Collateral, which is available to stream on Peacock. And in fact, I believe all three of these films are available to stream on like free service.
Few Good Men is on Paramount Plus. They're also available at my house. Come on over.
Minority Report, I believe, is on MGM Plus, which no one has. But...
Sorry, no, I meant Minority Report. It's on Paramount Plus right now too.
It's on Paramount Plus too. Okay. I still don't understand what MGM Plus is. I literally got it to watch this film and then I canceled it. I was like, I don't know what this does. But okay.
Next time, just let me know. I'll just give you my Voodoo login.
I don't remember that. Any Tom Cruise film, I'll just get in touch with you. Karen, I really want to see this. Can I watch it? Like, you
probably have it.
You have a link? Got a file, something? Don't do that, kids. Not what you're supposed to do. But,
password sharing is wrong.
It's wrong. So, any final thoughts on Tom Cruise? I'm certain we'll talk about Tom Cruise again.
I do not have final thoughts. I just have more thoughts.
on this particular episode, do you have final thoughts on Tom Cruise, Kara?
Just that this is further evidence, I guess, maybe further arguments to my Tom Cruise should have 7 Oscar nominations by now essay that I will write one day. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, these are all they're very different. Like you were saying at the beginning, these are all very different movies, but I love how these are all one-off movies. None of these have sequels, and they show such different aspects of his ability, and also they're really good entries from each of the directors that made them too.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that.
Good movies are good.
Good movies are good. Watch more movies.
Yes.
So I think that is going to close up for this week. Thank you, as always, for listening. And thank you especially to our patrons, to include Abby, Ali, Brian, Connor, Estefania, Ferdinand, Heather, James, Judy, Carriata, Matt, Michelle, Monty, Nanina, Noel, Robert, Steve, Sharon, and Tao. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. If anybody is owed buttons and stickers, you should be getting them fairly soon. I got to go buy envelopes because I have destroyed some envelopes before. I'm trying to mail better ones. So as long as we have your address, as long as it's a U.S. mailing address, you will get those shortly. And of course, if you want to join their number, we are on patreon.com/citizendame, and you get some bonus episodes. And I think that we're doing some pretty exciting bonus episodes that will be coming up before long.
Oh, yeah.
Because we are going to cover the entire series of Our Flag Means Death in just short little episodes discussing the series and things that we love, and of course analyzing the fuck out of it, because that's what we do here. So you can listen to those if you join our Patreon. That's patreon.com/citizendame. We do have an Etsy store, etsy.com/shop/citizendamepod. We've been having a few issues with that, but I think that they're fixed now. And we also have a Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com/citizendame. And of course, we have our website, citizendamepod.com, where you can read reviews and get other links and other editorials, etc. And you can get in touch with us a multitude of ways. citizendamepod@gmail.com is our email. And of course, we have our various socials. On Twitter and Instagram, we are @CitizenDamePod. And on Letterboxd, we are @CitizenDame, where we are at Letterboxd HQ. So you can find links to everything and lists and all sorts of fun shit as well. And of course, you can get in touch with us individually. Karen, where are you?
I am on all the socials, but especially Letterboxd and Instagram at Karen M. Peterson.
And I am on Instagram and Letterboxd at LH Business. And that will close us out for this week. Thank you so much for listening.
Bye.
Let's go. Hey, why don't you just take the cab?
Take the cab?
Yeah, you take it. I'll chill. I'll just chill. They don't even know who's driving these things half the time anyway, man. They never check or anything. Okay, so just take it. You, me.
You promise not to tell anybody, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Promise.
Get in the fucking car.
You
Get in the car.